Hey y'all, happy 2023. If there's one thing you should know about me, whether you're a returning subscriber or a brand new face to the channel, I love a good tier list. I really do. I think they're just such a great way to categorize things. They kind of fit the way my brain works. It's still a list. It's got layers, but like there's more nuance. And today we're going to be tier ranking all of the films I watched in 2022. May I present to you the categories? Our top category is And the Oscar Goes To. Next, we have our film school darlings. Now, the reason that this is the order that it is because I think that these films sort of have that prestige to them. But in my opinion, the film of the year or like the best picture of the year, even though it may not be what the Oscars picks, should be something that's generally popular. And I feel like a lot of movies that get Oscar attention or are kind of Oscar worthy or traditionally thought of as such, they tend to be very film schooly. Our third category is Let's Rewatch It, because let's be honest, even though some of the movies I'm planning to put in this category are better objectively, or I feel are better made, better written, have better technical prowess to them, I don't know that I want to rewatch them all the time. And Let's Rewatch It is like, that was solid. I would recommend it. Next, we have Run of the Mill, good old fashioned movie. I think some movies are just good movies.
Favorite thing about the movie is like it feels like a movie.
They're just solid movies. They're not like changing the game. They're not the biggest and brightest MCU film, which of course I usually love, but like they're just not changing the game. That's all I have to say about that. These are the movies that I actually think are bad because they're the movies that after I watch, I either don't want to review at all, dread reviewing, or I have a shorter review of because I don't want to talk about them. There's movies that I hated last year that I would rather talk about than these movies in this category, and I'm sorry to say that. Burn the Reel. This is like, I kind of wish it didn't exist. Like, I'm just kind of not a fan. And we, of course, have It's Morbin Time, which is, it's so bad that maybe I rewatched it once or twice, or like in the right context, it could be good. And then we have TBW, which is To Be Watched. There's a lot of movies listed on this tier list. I did not make it myself. A couple that I actually like genuinely want to get around to. The biggest one, of course, that y'all are going to roast me for is Avatar. I just genuinely haven't gotten around to seeing this. I thought a couple times I was going to watch this with family. It didn't happen over the holidays. So this is on my priority list in this kind of January down season to get to. Then we've got Violent Night, which was something I was actually really looking forward to, but the screening fell on a day that I couldn't go to. And the same goes for The Whale. Do Revenge, same goes for The Menu. This one was one that I just heard really wonderful things about. This is gonna get to the point where this list is just as long as everything else. I didn't watch the Harry Potter reunion. Okay, this one, I watched like 60% of this movie. It's The Lost City with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum and Brad Pitt. I watched like 60% of it and then had to get ready for something else, and it just like, everybody else around me finished it, so there's never a reason to rewatch it. Greatest Beer Run Ever, that really intrigued me, and I was really actually disappointed that I couldn't see that one when it first came out. So I definitely want to get around to that. The Weird Al movie on Roku, like I want to know. And The Woman King. So I'd like to see both of those. But these are the ones that I feel like I'll actually watch and get to, and that's like a relatively good number that I could probably polish all of those off in January and be like, okay, 2022 is done. Let's go forward. Hotel Transylvania. I watched this movie at the beginning of the year. Clearly not the target audience for it, although I am a huge fan of animation, and I'm a strong believer too that kids movies should not just be dumb physical comedy. They should be smart, and this just didn't have this, so it's just gonna go there. Because, like, your kid might love this. And, like, I don't have a kid, so I don't know. The 355. This is a controversial opinion. This was my first major review of 2022. I liked it. It was fine. Not a lot of people like this movie, so let's not dwell on it, okay? Scream. Literally, let's rewatch it right now. Right now. This one, I have only seen the one time. This is, of course, Scream 5 technically, but I think the story is well done. I think the commentary that every Scream movie has, but this one in particular in regards to the requel or the reboot / sequel that we've seen a lot in recent years, fantastic. Uncharted, good old-fashioned run-of-the-mill movie. Dare I say, I would rewatch it right now if someone had it on. The Sky is Everywhere. This one, if you look at my letterbox, as of right now, it's like the third of the year. But as the year has gone on, this movie has stuck with me. Like I permanently remember this movie, all the things I was impressed about this movie. I was super passionate making this review. However, it's very sad. I don't typically want to just rewatch that. So this is where this Film School Darlings comes into play, because if you're a fan of like magical realism or something like Jane the Virgin, it's not a mystical story, but there's elements there, or like Dickinson, you will love this movie. I want you back. This movie is one of the better and more universal rom-coms. I have watched a lot of rom-coms, like a lot of rom-coms, a significant amount. And I Want You Back is a wonderful addition to that. This is a movie that I immediately wanted to rewatch. And I think, if I'm going to be honest with myself, I don't know that it deserves and the Oscar goes to category, but it definitely should be higher than the Film School Darlings. Okay, we switched those around. Purely and simply because this movie. Marry Me. This is like not a great rom-com, but it's Jennifer Lopez, so it has that going for it. It goes in run-of-the-mill good old-fashioned movie. Because honestly, there's not a lot to critique other than that weird fish eye thing. I did a review of this, and like maybe I liked how the review came out better than I actually liked the movie, but I just remember feeling like I really liked this movie at the time. It's Owen Wilson and Jennifer Lopez, and I don't think you're gonna have a horrible time. The Outfit is a movie that has kind of slipped under my radar. Do you think it's like really sneakily good? Death on the Nile definitely is, that's all I have to say about that. Compared to Glass Onion, no. This movie suffered a lot. If you know any of the actors and stuff around this movie, I don't want to go into it because, again, that's all I have to say about that. I don't really want to talk about this movie that much more. You can tell why this movie suffered. Okay, The Batman. Now, I did one review of this, and I was glowing about it. I was like, oh, DC has done it. They know how to do these one-off movies. They should just do more of these. And I do have generally positive emotions towards this film. However, upon rewatching it and talking to a couple different people who had more critical perceptions, upon hearing critiques and then rewatching the movie, it just didn't sit as well with me. And I'm sorry, this is going to be my real hot take of this video. The score of this movie just constantly repeats itself. Yes, it's very memorable. Like, I will never forget that score, but like, is it that amazing? I don't know. I am going to be fair and put it in Film School Darlings, but I just don't think it's like for me, it's definitely not a rewatch. And I don't know that it's really Oscar. I think there's elements of it that are Oscar worthy. Don't get me wrong, but yeah. And then of course we have to talk about the King of the Kings, Morbius. Listen, I love Matt Smith. He is absolved of all crimes that this movie may or may not have committed. It is not his fault. It is not his fault. Turning Red, I really liked this movie, but I don't think there's like a ton that's special about it. I watched this on my own time and didn't do a review of it. I actually wrote a piece on my website, Assembled Press. I feel like this movie for me was really validating of like my younger self, because I was a girl who loved boy bands, and I was very in my room and I drew. At the time, there's like a lot of struggles you go through in middle school. But when you get older, you kind of look back on that time and like the things that you did in like a loving way, or at least I do, because there's certain realities of the world that mean that you can't just like go around only focusing your attention on boy bands all the time. Having that passion is just such a wonderful thing, and keeping that childlike wonder about you without it like causing harm to anyone else. Like, I think that's something that adults lose. And this movie reminded me to hang on to some of that. Secrets of Dumbledore, literally burn it. These movies should never have gone past Fantastic Beasts, the first ones, okay? The whole Grindelwald and Dumbledore thing is cool. Objectively, that backstory to Harry Potter is something that pretty much anyone who likes Harry Potter wants to hear about. But I don't want to get a half-baked story because you have to include Newt Salamander or Scamander, or I know his name is Newt Scamander. I was trying to be funny, but I don't want a story about him and like random crabs and things he has to do. Again, this is just me, like, not like, you just don't make a trilogy about Hufflepuffs. And I'm sorry to anyone who is a Hufflepuff. You are great people. And the like hints at Grindelwald that Deathly Hallows Part 2 has, so good. So good. They even had Jamie Campbell or Vecna. They did such a good job setting that up. I'm just saying, the bones of the house were there, and then like you built a shack on it. Sorry, not sorry. Chip and Dale, it was fine. Jurassic World, literally burn it. Literally never make another movie like this again, ever. I'm sorry. The plot of this is incoherent. This is a movie about bugs, not dinosaurs, so don't let them fool you, okay? I'm sorry, just don't waste your time with it. Honestly, do not. Like, it does not deserve to be even in its morbid time, because you can't laugh at it because they're being serious. At least Morbius, I think, is going to go down as like a camp classic of our generation. I do. Not this. It's just bad. Time for me to get some more heat. I need to rewatch Multiverse of Madness. I think it was better than I initially thought it was going to be, but in a lot of ways it also disappointed me. And I ultimately think, after multiple conversations with friends of mine, this should have been a Wanda movie. I don't know why it needed to be a Doctor Strange movie. For WandaVision to be the lead-in and then this to be what you gave us of Wanda, I personally I wasn't a fan. Like, I'm fine with her being the villain, but I just don't understand why Doctor Strange was sort of sidelined in his own movie. I like America Chavez a lot. I love Wanda. I love everything they did with the Illuminati. I loved getting to see the multiverses, although I do even kind of feel like we kind of visited like 2 multiverses and that was it. I like the whole dreams concept, especially looking back on the MCU. I think some people are doing Marvel some more credit than necessarily Marvel deserves, and I love Marvel, so that's coming from love. Being honest, I'm gonna love it a lot more than a lot of other movies on this list, but it's not like my fave. And where I'm going to be controversial, I really liked Thor: Love and Thunder. I thought it was fantastic. I liked it off the bat. I liked it. I'm sorry. Last year, 2022 was truly my year of controversial Marvel opinions and Marvel takes. And I've just accepted that that's where I stand within the fandom now. And I'm okay with it. Lightyear, I gave this a pretty glowing review, or I at least talked about like the animation of it. After rewatching it a second time, that's all I have to say about that movie. Okay, and coming off of all I have to say about that movie, Top Gun Maverick. I'm sorry, but if this movie is not nominated for Best Picture, I'm not saying it needs to win, but if it is not nominated, I really think the Oscars has completely lost its grasp on movie-going audiences, theaters, who watches movies nowadays, because this movie genuinely is like the reason that people watch movies. Oh my gosh, and I'm sorry, but the first Top Gun does not even hold a candle to this movie. This movie is just of such a higher quality than the first film. Call me ridiculous, tell me I have recency bias, you can argue with the wall. This movie is fantastic. Where the Crawdads Sing is a good old-fashioned run-of-the-mill movie. And it's definitely, the book is great, and I think it changes up certain things. It doesn't change anything about the book, but it like reorders certain elements of the book, because the way in which the book is presented is very literary. You need your climax of the movie to be different than where the climax is in the book. The ending is just off enough to slightly bother me about the movie. The Gray Man. This one, let's rewatch it. I tried to get multiple people to rewatch this movie. I just thought it was a good movie. Like, I'm a big fan of the Russo brothers and what they're able to do. I think this is really, I don't want to say comfort zone, but their expertise. This is where their expertise lies, making a movie like The Gray Man. And I was really looking forward to this one from the time that it was announced that it was going to be Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. And I really think it delivered on at least my hype. I think it was just good. So maybe it should be down here. Don't know. I will put it there. I would definitely rewatch it. So don't take these as like not rewatch. But now I'm realizing my listing system wasn't the absolute best thing. Bullet Train. I have really been wanting to rewatch this. So it tempts me to put it here because I do think it's a really fun movie. But I think I'm going to put it in Film School Darlings because I think it's a better action movie than The Gray Man. The one critique I had of The Gray Man, you're jumping locations a lot. Like the travel time doesn't necessarily line up. But Bullet Train all kind of takes place contained within the bullet train that they're on, but you kind of jump around from character to character pretty quickly, and then you get some of their backstories, which I thought was really cool. It has a non-linear storytelling structure. If you're a fan of Quentin Tarantino films, I highly recommend this one, and that's why I'm going to put it in the Film School Darlings, because it's got that element of like uniqueness to it. Emily the Criminal. I recently rewatched this, and this is going to go in Film School Darlings because I do actually think it's like in a lot of ways better than a lot of these movies. It follows Aubrey Plaza, who is kind of like a down on her luck individual. In this movie, you kind of see how someone could both unintentionally, but through like their own choices, get themselves further and further and deeper into a hole or a bad situation and just feel like there's no way out and just, you have to just keep going. You're like, oh, don't make that bad choice. But also you kind of feel like she doesn't have any other choice. And I think that's a really interesting character study. Nope. It definitely goes here. Part of me wants to put in Burn the Reel because I just compare it to Jordan Peele's two other films. It just doesn't hit as hard for me. If I'm being completely honest, there's a level of like a movie intellectually challenging me to figure it out and then being like undecipherable. And I like when a movie is more closer to like the leaving enough mystery for me to like come up with the ending on my own. This one's gonna get me in trouble, but I actually no. That's too harsh. It's gonna go here, and let me tell you why. Actually, no. Okay, this is not based on personal merit. This is just what I think that the movie deserves. This movie deserves to be talked about, okay? Elvis by Austin Butler. And I'm sure it will continue to be talked about. But as I've thought more about it, this movie, I sort of didn't like this movie, and I did sort of like Blonde. And like that was sort of the inverse opinion of the popular consensus. I think the interesting thing is to look at these two icons that lived at approximately the same time. So we'll put Blonde, this is where I'm going to put it, because I genuinely think it deserves to be up here in the artistic. And let me tell you why. We're going to do a little brief version of an essay I sort of wrote for myself that may or may not become a video. Why are these two people who both died tragic deaths, who both had drug issues in their lives, who both are widely and integrally tied to the American ideal of celebrity and iconography? And these two movies, why is one seen as like should be nominated for Best Picture, the actor was phenomenal, the movie is widely loved, blah, 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 blah. And the other one, both of which too take a perspective of that person sort of being a victim of either their circumstances or people who sort of controlled and pulled the strings in their lives. And then why is Blonde seen as like exploitative and like you need to let Marilyn rest? That's a conversation that I think needs to be had around Oscar season. I don't understand it. I do not get it. Okay, moving on. Nobody wanted to have this intellectual conversation in this video. They just want to see what you liked, Sasha. Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. Film school darling. This movie, I would never rewatch. That's me. Like half of these I wouldn't or these two I wouldn't rewatch. I don't think I would rewatch Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. I saw both the short film and I saw this, and I think they're both great. Sterling K. Brown and Regina Hall are just magnificent in this movie, and that alone is worth like taking a look at or watching a scene of. And I like the conversation that this has as somebody who's a Christian and growing up in the South. There's a lot of that nuance in this movie, so much of it that I think is like so fascinating. But because it's so specific, I don't know if people are going to look upon this movie and just be like, oh, this is weird. I love the satire element of it. I love the mockumentary style. Don't worry, darling. This movie is getting hate, and why? Literally, why? Okay, first of all, what I will put out there, Olivia Wilde said that she was inspired by a bunch of different other movies. She named those movies explicitly, which probably should have given more of us an indication as to what was going on in this movie. But I was still surprised, okay? You might have guessed the plot twists or some of the plot twists, but I guarantee you didn't know what the whole movie was about. And I will say that the major part of this movie that I think is going to lose people is if you buy in to the Harry Styles hype. Whatever you want to call it. The remnants of direction mania, shall we call it? The love and pop culture icon that Harry Styles is, or like being someone that is attracted to Harry Styles, all of that plays into this movie in a very interesting paratextual way. Black Adam is a run-of-the-mill superhero movie. It is good. I think it will be improved upon by where DC goes from here, because on one hand you have the Justice Society of America that I think is introduced really well in this film and done in a way, which again you can watch my review, but they choose characters that already sort of have a understanding in popular culture who may be similar to superheroes that you've seen in other media, so that you immediately get an understanding for them and you don't waste a lot of time on them. So I really appreciated that. But I think all of the Henry Cavill-ness that this movie had for it in the press of this film and post-credit scenes, I mean, I guess I'm not spoiling anything because Superman's not back. Like, he was, but he's not anymore. So you have Justice Society of America, which could go somewhere that a lot of people might like. But then you also introduced Henry Cavill back to not sign a deal with him.
I will say this.
But
Welcome
you
home.
did this for what? Why not?
Glass Onion, okay, this one, definitely let's rewatch it. Like, I'm actually desperate to rewatch this. At first I was like, it was good. It was a good movie. I think it's really strong. I think it's a strong sequel. I think it has a lot going for it. I can't wait to hear people's reactions. And then, like, as I've seen people, like, as the movies come out over Christmas and, like, people haven't been in an immediate rush to watch it, I realized, like, I really want to rewatch it. So it's definitely top of the rewatch list. Black Panther, definitely a rewatch one. Wakanda Forever, like, sits in my mind as, like, almost, like, half good and half bad. But I know, I guess here's the thing with all Marvel movies, that I'm a little bit biased. So take this with a grain of salt. They're always going to be higher in my mind because I know I'm going to rewatch them, and I also know that there's pieces of them that could come to be better later. What this movie's goal was, I liked, which was honoring Chadwick Boseman and like continuing the story from there. And the villain of Namor, like that is like top tier. That's in the Oscar goes to level. But a couple of the choices, by the time I saw the movie, just felt almost obvious, and this movie in a lot of ways felt like they had a plot, And I think it's since been released what the plot initially was, which was always going to contain Namor. So it makes sense why that's like the strongest element of this movie, as well as the like grief part, because that comes from a genuine place. So something that's established and the genuineness. I think all the Marvel films this year are like middle of the road movies. I don't know that they're like top 10 MCU movies. Amsterdam, that's all I have to say about that. Like, I liked it probably better than all of those, but I haven't really thought about much since. I think it's like surprisingly topical and like surprisingly good, but it's also kind of surprisingly bad. It's very middle of the road, and I probably wouldn't rewatch it again. Like, I saw it on DVD and I was like, who's gonna buy that? Rosaline, oh my gosh, literally I would put it in the top tier, except that I just don't know that it deserves that, and I've only watched it the one time. But oh my gosh, this was just such a fun movie. Like, if you want, again, a rom-com, a really good story, meta humor, but like not in a ridiculously obnoxious way, like clever. If you're a fan of Shakespeare or like Bridgerton or any of the like kind of ahistorical modern tellings of historical pieces, it is so good. Like, genuinely, it was such a wonderful little surprise. My Policeman, all I have to say about that. I think this proves that Harry Styles is at least a decent actor. Let's see him in something other than kind of a drama or like a side piece role. He definitely has more presence in this film that he does in Don't Worry Darling, which I think is intentional. And I think Don't Worry Darling did a good job of not making him a huge on-screen presence. Whereas My Policeman, he's obviously like the titular character. I thought Harry was good, but you know, let's see him in a couple different roles. I'd love to see him in a comedy. My favorite movie of the year, Babylon. Now, I don't think that this is gonna win Best Picture at the Oscars, nor do I necessarily think it should, because even though I do think there is something absolutely magnetic about this film, I, even thinking that this is the best film of this year, cannot say that this movie was better than Top Gun Maverick in terms of Top Gun Maverick's appeal. Whoever decided that this movie should be released at the time that like people and their families want to go see movies, horrible choice. I genuinely think that this movie should have been rated higher, like NC-17, at least equal with Blonde, if not more so. It's definitely more crude. It's so much more provocative and like blatant about its hedonistic culture, which is intentional for the film. It's very intentional. I don't understand how it only got an R rating. Like, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't get it. I thought this movie was fantastic. You all know that I'm a Damien Chazelle fan, and I think he's 4 of 4 for all of his movies. Like, I love them all. This one, it's not better than La La Land. Like, I'm gonna rewatch La La Land every year, and the reason I even created this less rewatch it category is because Babylon probably goes here. Like, if I'm being perfectly honest, this is how the year laid out. But for me, this is my favorite movie. Like, I genuinely think it deserves an Oscar nomination. It's gonna be probably the one that people are like, I didn't even go see that, or I don't want to see that. Listen, the movie is 3 hours. It is an abrasive, intense, hedonistic look at Hollywood, how it has developed into what it is today, rejecting the assumption that it's only now that Hollywood has gone like super crazy and people are wacko and like people just do whatever they want and they don't care about society or whatever, or that like there was a day and age where people were like all 100% serious about film. And I love the way that this analyzes what rules and safety things have been put in place on set. I love this unobscured look at Hollywood for all of its brilliance, its glamour, and like its absolute horridness. And for somebody who loves movie making, who feels like in some way, form or fashion, my life has been dedicated or defined by film and my love of film, this movie encapsulates all of that for me. But that might not be the case for you. For the sake of this list, it deserves in the film school darlings, and it deserves to be the best of those. But the Oscar, in my opinion, should go to Top Gun. I look at all the movies that I have seen this year. There are ones that I think probably will win Best Picture that I have not seen yet. But when I look at the ones that I have seen, this is the one that is just box office, popular appeal, critical praise, lasting impression. Like, that's the movie of the year, babe. That's the movie of the year. Whether the Oscars gives it a golden statue or not, that's the movie of the year. These are my rankings. These are my tiers. I'm going to update my letterbox to reflect this, and you can click one of the links in the description below to go access that if you care to follow me on there. I hope you guys enjoy this video more than I probably will editing this down. Editing, Sasha, how you doing? Hang in there, babe. I will see you all in my next video next week, most likely. And again, thank you for all the love and support this past year. Most of these movies I saw early because of you all, and I just want to say thanks. Have an absolutely amazing day, y'all, and I'll see you in the next one. You can also go ahead and click one of these next titles to find something else you might enjoy.